My name is Barbara Forrest. I'm a professor of philosophy at Southeastern Louisiana University, and my area of expertise on the evolution creationism issue is the nature and goals of the intelligent design creationist movement. The current controversy of evolution versus creationism is one in which you have a segment of the American population who, for religious reasons, has never been able to accommodate modern science and even most aspects of the modern world, many aspects of the modern world. They long for and would like to recapture a pre-modern world. And so, and what they believe are the religious foundations of that world. So they reject much of modern science, they reject specifically evolution, and they are really trying to work the country back, to bring the country back to what they regard as its properly religious foundations. And they are using politics in order to do that. So they're using politics to advance what is essentially a religious goal. That is the heart of the evolution versus creationism issue. The creationist movement is attempting to accomplish something I can describe in one word: theocracy. It means rule by, or government by people in positions of political authority, all of whom share the same religious beliefs, the same religious preferences, and to have public policy, the policy that governs especially public education, but really public policy in a much broader sense, to have that reflect their own particular religious views. And the people that I'm talking about here are largely evangelical Protestants, but also there's a very far-right group of Catholics involved, and now increasingly even Orthodox Jews that are being drawn into the political currents that unite Protestant evangelicals and very conservative Catholics. They're now uniting because they share the same political goals. They want to see the country governed by people who think that religion should be the foundation of public policy. This controversy began when a group of Christians, because that's who we're really talking about, found themselves unable to depart from a very rigid, literalistic understanding of the Bible in a way that allowed them to reconcile their religious beliefs with the findings of modern science. Then later, in addition to the biblical literalists, were added evangelicals who are not necessarily literalists, but who interpret the Bible so rigidly that they simply can't find room in their religious beliefs to accommodate modern science. And in addition to that, they think that science robs life of its sense of purpose, its meaning. If we are all the product of natural processes, then there's no such thing as a moral foundation for human action. Life loses its purpose, life loses its meaning. And all of this really goes back to the way they understand the Bible. If you look at the history of biblical interpretation, you will see that it's not a continuous history of biblical literalism. There's a great deal of fluidity in the way people have understood the Christian scriptures, but there has always been a contingent of Americans who simply are so rigid, not only in the way they understand Scripture, but in the way they understand religion itself, that they can't accommodate modern science and the modern world. They feel terribly threatened by that. And when you combine that with the high degree of religious conservatism that represents, and the very high level of scientific illiteracy that we have in this country, and the anti-intellectualism that we also have in this country, the fact that people regard academics, professionals like me, as eggheads or the intellectual elite or snobs. That combination of three things has kept the wind in the sails of the creationist movement. Creationists have had to evolve. They have an evolutionary history, and it has to do with the fact that they always lose in court. They've never won a federal court case, but there are some major cases that have forced them, after each of these major losses, to morph into something a little different. The first of these major cases was the 1968 Epperson versus Arkansas. That Supreme Court, United States Supreme Court ruling said that you could not ban evolution in a public school. Because prior to that, a number of states like Arkansas, Tennessee had laws trying to ban evolution. Well, in 1968, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. You cannot ban evolution. It has to be there. If it's part of the required curriculum, it's going to be there. So after that, creationists said, okay, well, if we can't ban it, we'll try to get in alongside it. And so they came up with creation science, trying to make science or creationism, trying to get it in alongside to balance it off against evolution. So then there was another court case that came out of my own state of Louisiana, the 1987 Edwards versus Aguillard ruling, saying that you cannot balance science with religion. You cannot balance evolution with creation science, no matter how much you try to make creationism sound scientific. Just calling it creation science won't work. So most people, I think, thought that the 87 Edwards decision would finally put a stop to creationism, except that it didn't. Creationists realized if they were going to continue their efforts, they were going to have to change even more. They were going to have to get rid of the term creationism in the label that they gave themselves. They were going to have to get rid of some of the sillier claims they were making, such as that the earth is only 6,000 to 10,000 years old. They knew they couldn't get to square one, referring explicitly all the time to the Bible, to the book of Genesis. So in the early 80s, a group of creationists who morphed into the intelligent design movement got rid of the label creationism, at least in their public activities, but only after they were well established in the public, among their own followers as creationists. So they've had to overcome the obstacle of the Constitution, or they've been trying to overcome the obstacle of the Constitution. And after every major loss, they've had to regroup under using slightly different terminology. So what they keep doing is sanitizing their terminology, trying to get around the Constitution by fooling federal judges, which is what the intelligent design movement is presently trying to do. The Constitution is their biggest obstacle.